Hey there, guys. Thank you for joining us today at our 10 Capital Quick Pitch. Really excited for another great session. We do these monthly, so appreciate you joining us and join us next time as well. My name is Shane. I run the events over at 10 Capital Network, and we're really excited to have Lori Sircone from CTAN and John Sechrest from Seattle Angel Conference join us on our panel today. If you have any questions at all during the session, you can go ahead and put those in our chat box. And please don't forget, as we just saw in the intro, answer the poll at the end of each pitch if you're interested in learning more about our companies today. With that, I'm going to hand it off to our CEO, Hall Martin, to get things started.
Great. Well, thank everybody for joining us today. We have two great panelists in the startup world that are going to ask the questions. And I'm looking forward to your questions in the audience through the chat box as well. Let's bring them up and have them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit more about their group. The first is John Sechrest of the Seattle Angel Conference. John, can you tell us more about yourself and your group and what you guys do?
Thanks, Hall. I'm the founder of a program that creates new angel investors. We see ourselves at the very beginning of the angel investing journey. We have been going for 12 years. We run 4 cycles a year right now where we gather a bunch of investors and a bunch of companies and do that first slow motion investment for people to learn. The consequence of that is many new angel groups in Seattle as a result of our alumni going off and being active angels.
Great, thanks. And from the Central Texas Angel Network, we have Lori Sircone. Lori, can you tell us more about yourself and CTAN?
Yes, so I've been involved with CTAN since 2016 as an angel. I've been on the CTAN board for the last 4 years and serve as the board president currently. Our group has about 150 active members, angel investors, and just recently in the past year, we've also brought on a sidecar fund. So our members write checks as well as our sidecar fund also invests in companies. We have 6 funding cycles per year, and I will put our website in the chat here. So we are in right now taking applications for our 5th funding cycle. The funding cycle is about a 3-week cycle, which starts with the applications and then two pitches, a virtual pitch and then an in-person pitch if you are voted through. And we typically end up funding anywhere from 1 to 3 companies per funding that get all the way through. But anywhere along the process, our individual members can write checks and invest in any company they see. So about 50% of our deals are funded outside of actually getting through diligence. So I encourage you all, I put the website there. If you go to the website under entrepreneurs, you can look at our funding dates. Our next deadline for application is August 21st. And you can see for any investors that want some information about our group, we in addition to the deal flow, we have social events and education events as well, which you can find on our website. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Lori. For those in the audience, after our 5 presentations, each one will have 15 minutes to pitch and answer questions. They'll answer from the panelists first and from the audience second. At the end of that, if you want to learn more about 10 Capital as either an investor or a startup, just hang on the line and I'll walk us through it when we finish here today. So with that, let's go and bring up our first panelist, Nick Kuhn of CTEX. Nick, if you could go ahead and launch your slides and kick off.
All right, thanks, Hall. So I'm Nick Kuhn, CEO of XVII Technologies. We're a company based in Pittsburgh. We are an advanced material company. We've developed a totally new technology that is changing the game in adhesion and grip. XVII essentially has leveraged the biology of the gecko to create a dry adhesive and gripping material that has wide range of applications in both the consumer and industrial world. What we do essentially, what you can see here is a gecko that's hanging by its toe pad, and these are called setae, which is what has driven our brand name XVII. And these little hairs that are on the toe of a gecko give it this amazing ability to climb walls and carry its own weight just on a tiny little toe. So what we've done is create a technology that mimics that, and that's the core element of our gripping and tape products. So as I said, we're based in Pittsburgh. We're currently at a $4 million run rate. This company is to over 10 years of university and government funded research, very deep IP portfolio. We have a 12,000 square foot facility in Pittsburgh where we manufacture. There's been 11 million in equity raised to date, and we're currently doing $1 million bridge round. So as I said again, the gecko has this unique ability to climb walls and essentially has this dry adhesive technology built into its feet. And what we do is create surfaces similar to the gecko's toe pad by essentially creating these mushroom-shaped microstructures that are incorporated either into injection molded surfaces or tape surfaces that have a unique ability to grip to skin for our consumer products or have dry adhesive capabilities for our industrial products. What I'm going to show you here is a video. This is our microstructures moving against skin, and they have this. You'll see that these are at 100 micron level, so that's a tenth of a millimeter, and you see how the mushroom tips are actually stretching and sort of digging into the skin. So this is a very soft material, but has a really unique ability to grip in wet and oily conditions. So if you look at this graph, you can see this is a coefficient of friction to skin. In dry conditions, we're about a 20% improvement, but in wet and oily conditions, it's the exact same material with the microstructures incorporated into it and without. And with the microstructures, we're almost a threefold increase in the coefficient of friction to skin in wet or sweaty conditions. So what does this mean for our consumer products? We've launched our first consumer product about 3 years ago on Amazon. We started out in the eyewear space based on a project we had with Oakley. We now have over 18 SKUs. We have ultra thin, standard, thick, both black and clear, and other colors. We've achieved a 45% market share in this segment on Amazon. We launched a line of products for AirPod. We now have a whole line for gaming solutions. I'm going to show you this quick video.
Finally, your glasses are comfortable. Natural evolution gave the gecko its amazingly strong grip. Our multi-patented XVII technology duplicates the microstructured fibers on a gecko's foot for a revolutionary new way to keep your glasses comfortably and securely in place. Like a gecko's foot, the thousands of anti-slip fibers on each XVII nose pad rest comfortably on the skin surface for a secure, relaxed, comfortable fit, even on wet or oily skin. Stay in control with the comfort, support, and zero slip adhesion of XVII nose pads, inspired by nature, perfected by science. Order yours today.
So, as I said, we started out early 2020. This is our growth track over the last 3 years. This past quarter, we passed the $1 million quarter mark. Looks like we're going to do about $375,000 for the month of July. It's a $40 billion addressable market. If you look at the number of iframes, earbuds, gaming consoles, and bikes, rackets, and bats that could use our technology globally, so over 4 billion devices, which drives the $40 billion opportunity. So what I've given you up to date is just the consumer side of our business. Now I'm going to switch to the B2B side. So we have a number of B2B projects on with our consumers in the consumer space. We're working with Bose on their Quiet Comfort 3 ear tips. JR286 that makes Nike's receiver gloves. We have a project ongoing. It's in athlete testing right now for wet weather NFL receiver gloves. And we're working with Pentland that owns Speedo in a swim cap application. Now I'm going to pivot to the industrial side of our business, which is the tape sides. We make tape with these microstructures. It's a dry adhesive tape. It has a broad temperature range from -20 to 300 degrees C. It's a cleanable tape, so it's sustainable. You can see in this graph over 1,000 repetitions of our tape peeled against a stainless steel plate and is less than a 20% drop in performance. And what's unusual here is we actually are making a tape that uses these microstructures so that we can adjust the level of adhesion based on changing the microstructure. So in the exact same material, by adjusting the microstructure, we can make it a low, higher, a medium strength tape. We also are material agnostic, so we currently use polyurethanes, but we've recently launched a whole line of silicone-based tapes. So the applications are very broad. It's a huge industry, multi-hundred-billion-dollar industry. You know, we have applications in printing, in the semiconductor industry, medical, automotive, wearables. We are particularly focused in printing and semiconductor. I'm going to talk about two key applications. Working very closely with Tessa Tape, which is a German tape company, a big competitor of 3M's. This is a flexographic printing application where our tape is used in rolls to attach printing plates. You can see the forecast they've given us for the next 3 years, and we're currently going through a soft launch in the US with this partnership. Another area we're working in is wafer handling. These are wafer handling buttons. Axcelis is a major systems integrator in the semiconductor space. And this product we expect to be launching soon. Then there are other projects working currently in the semiconductor space. You can see the list of companies here. This is, again, chip handling. We, for example, have a JDA with Intel, in which we're incorporating our technology on wafers for chip handling. So again, that's a key area of focus for us is the semiconductor industry, where we see a lot of money flowing into that industry. The management team is a mix of advanced materials folks and also consumer folks for the consumer business. I'm going to mention Dina Gazarian, who's on our board and was a VP of sales at Monster. Our revenues are currently primarily on the consumer side. As I said, we're on a $4 million run rate. We think we'll get to 5 by the end of the year. But the long-term wealth of this business is going to be driven by the industrial business as we grow that. It has longer sales cycles, but better margins overall. The margins are very good on the consumer product. We make products, for example, the nose pads. We make a package of 5 for $1.50, and we sell it for $11.99. Overall, I think in terms of exit, we expect this consumer business to exit in the next 6 to 12 months. Most likely will be acquired by a strategic or private equity. And the tape business will be a longer 12 to 24 month exit. As I said, we're doing a convertible debt round, bridging into our next venture round. I do want to throw up a couple slides. So these are the key players in the flexographic printing and semiconductor tape space. The companies that are in this space are listed here. As I mentioned, we're working already with Tessa, and we're talking to them about a strategic investment in the company. In terms of comparables, the tape space in general will pay around 3 times revenue or 18 times EBITDA. This is a list of comparables over the last, from 2018 to present, that can be provided to investors. So I'm going to stop there and open up for questions. 5 minutes left.
Thanks for that. Lori, what's your first question?
Okay, let me go ahead. I'm not gonna put myself on camera, but you talked about consumer products being your largest market right now and moving to the industrial side for long-term growth and better margins. What channels will you use for that growth? Are you going to use distributors or a direct sales force? If you could talk a little bit about that. How are you going to reach those customers?
You're saying for the consumer growth or the industrial growth?
For the industrial growth.
Well, we are really working directly with major manufacturers. So we're not planning on using distributors. We are working essentially in specific target markets, and identifying these key players. So in the semiconductor space, we're, for example, exhibiting at the Semiconductor Packaging Meeting, Semicon West, and raising awareness of our technology that way. The majority of our potential business comes through our website and awareness of our technology.
So
So
you're
we don't-
using a direct sales approach then?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Direct business development folks in a specific industry.
Thank you. Very nice pitch, very comprehensive.
Thank you.
John, what's your question?
So I've been struggling a little bit to see the focus on the sales side. And I get the sense that really you're a technology company with very heavy tech-centric founders, and that there's not really an effective sales focus yet. And that you're really more like what I would identify as Luna Research, which is a group that formed a group that was interested in commercializing a technology, and then they spun out children to focus on specific markets. Is that the kind of thing that you're trying to do in the end, is to create sub-children businesses that are very effective at marketing to specific verticals? Or are you planning to be in the business of spinning out technology applications to other groups?
Well, there's a lot in that question to unpack. I would say, we are primarily a technical group. I mean, the first business that we would spin out, I think that is an accurate description, that we will be spinning out businesses over time. The first one that we will spin out is the consumer business, because that's the most advanced, and we are pretty sophisticated at this point from a sales and marketing standpoint on the consumer side. We have very good relationship with an agency that manages our product on Amazon. We have another one that manages our product, Amazon Europe and Japan. We just launched in China on Tmall with another partner. And now we're signing up, we're starting to introduce retail. So we're signing up retail business. For example, Curaçao is the first retail organization that we're going to launch with. They sell 80,000 AirPods a year, and are excited about using our SetX Grip solution for AirPods as an example. So I think we're pretty sophisticated on the consumer side. We'll continue build that business. It's right on the cusp of being cash flow break even, and then I think that will be the first one that we'll spin off.
So are you spinning that off as a child that you will still own, that a venture investment will still have a component on, or is it a sale to a separate entity where you're done with it?
Well, I think it will eventually be a sale, but right now, if you invest, it's, you're investing in a company that essentially you are getting equity in at both sides.
Yeah, okay. So that was the root of my question. And then you're going to have a research agreement from that child company back to the parent, so that development and the technology gets improved?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And when you spin that out, how are you building your C-suite team for the child company? What's the mechanism by which you're doing the staff development for that?
Well, we're planning on some of the team will move over that are, the people that are running that business right now. And then we'll build out from there. I think that the consumer business, the next major hire for that business would be a chief marketing officer, that has a lot of expertise in consumer brand building.
Great. Thanks, Nick. That's a great presentation. Thanks, John, for the good questions. Nicholas, there's a number of questions in the chat box after we close out. Can you go and answer those while we move to our next presenter, which is Pivot CX with Howard Bates and Mike Seidel?
All right, deck coming up for everybody. It looks like it is. All right. Hi, I'm
Ready.
Mike Seidel. Thanks, Hall. Thanks so much for having us. And Shane, thanks for all the work you do putting this together. I'm Mike Seidel. This is Howard Bates. And we're here to talk to you about Pivot CX. We are solving problems in the $54 billion HR tech market with our all-in-one communications hub for talent acquisition and for HR. A little bit about our team. Howard has done a few things I haven't done. One of those things is taken a company public. He was the founder and took a company called Kratos Defense Systems public. This is the fifth company out for me. And then David Bernstein, who's not here with us today, leads up our partnership efforts and helps us find revenue. You know, over the last few months, and as we've moved towards this round, we've brought in some really, really interesting people to join our board of advisors. Among those, the head of product from Genesis, one of the leading advisors on work tech investment in George LaRoque, Craig Fisher, who is widely regarded the expert on candidate experience in the recruiting world, William Tincup, who's one of the most popular thought leaders in the HR tech space. We've really attracted the attention of some interesting people. So before I get into our product and what we do and the problem we solve, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's special about Pivot CX. We have product market fit. We're ready to rapidly scale revenue once we get a little bit of funding in here. We've picked up some fantastic clients, including Kelly Services, Great Clips, Community Healthcare Network, 7-Step, HTI, Hornblower, and Holland America. So we've landed some really, really big name clients who use our software and count on our software to talk to their employees and their candidates. Our leadership team and advisors have about 70 years of HR tech experience and over 30 exits between all of us. And we are building a new category of software in the HR tech, work tech world. We have the first communication hub of its kind. We own all of our IP, and because we have kind of staked our claim to communications, we're uniquely positioned to really help companies exploit a lot of the newer LLM AI technology. So, if you look at companies out there, if you've ever applied for a job and never heard back from a recruiter, or maybe you reached out to HR and asked about benefits and never heard anything back, well, it's not surprising, and it's not because the HR folks or because recruiters don't like you. It's because they're just really, really busy. Being a recruiter, being an HR person is really tough. You have to log into 21 different systems on average every day. A lot of times those systems don't give you access to the right communication channel. So you're trying to send emails to the next great forklift driver instead of texting. We also really go a long way towards helping improve the candidate experience. And believe it or not, 50% of ad spend gets wasted because the candidate never gets a call from a recruiter. And then as we move into the employment side, we find that there's a lot of situations where employee engagement costs people their job, costs people basically the people they've recruited. We don't keep them in, and it ends up costing 36 to 60% of annual salary. Just a quick look at our market that we're in. I get really, really excited about two things. One is the CAGR of 20% until 2030, and then our service obtainable market is $209 million. That's big enough for us to succeed in, and even some competitors to succeed in. So we're in a really good growing place, and the HR tech space is really positioned to be one of the hotter venture markets over the next few years. Our product is very straightforward. We have software that you connect to your applicant tracking system, connect to your HRIS, connect to your employment CRM. You hook all that together with Pivot CX. We can manage communication across voice, video, and email.
Yeah,
voice, video,
Yeah, sorry.
email, text. There we go.
Yes.
Voice,
yes.
video, email,
So it's
text.
basically any channel that a candidate or employee would want to communicate on.
And what's important there is we're able to put people in the right channel so that they're able to talk, back to that forklift driver. We're able to communicate with them via text message. We do definitely improve candidate experience dramatically. We give recruiters more bandwidth, and we give the recruiters tools that they just didn't have for personalizing at scale. In a lot of cases, we're letting recruiters and HR folks be able to service thousands of people a day instead of tens.
Another key element to that is all the data, which is somewhat unstructured data, is all now in a single repository, which is extremely important to, these organizations.
And because of that, we're really well positioned to bring to market a few generative AI features, and we will be bringing 3 features out by October of this year: Smart Translations, Talent Copilot, and HR Copilot, which are really there to advise recruiters and HR folks on what the right thing to say to their candidates are or their employees. So just a quick look at what industry experts are saying about us. And I'm not going to read these off to everybody on the call. You can take a look at the deck later on. But we really are ahead of our market a little bit. We have a product that's just brand new. There is nothing else like it on the market. We do have some competition, though. And those competitors are companies that really are single channel tools. So if you go back to that slide where I talked about the problem where we had to log into 21 systems. Well, one of the problems that recruiters have is in order to communicate with candidates, they might have to log into an applicant tracking system, an over-the-top texting system, and 3 or 4 other systems just to do email and voice. And then all the records from that are in different systems. Well, with Pivot, we do voice, video, web, and text, and we integrate with 128 different CRMs and HRISs. We actually integrate with 5 times more systems than our nearest competitor does, and we enable 3 times more channels than they do. Our business model is really, really straightforward. We're B2B SaaS. We sell on a monthly subscription basis. We have 2 price tiers, and these are what they are. Our ARR, though, is actually higher than these price tiers, and that's because we have developed a really clear strategy for upselling, and we have the right pieces to add on to this to make it so our customers do usually pay a little more than what the advertised price is. There's a quick look at what's included in our package with it, and we do things by the team. So instead of selling by the user, we enable a team. So you might have a West Coast team and an East Coast team. Makes it a lot easier for the HR people to buy and a lot simpler to understand and price. We sell through 2 channels. About half of it is channel partners, and the other half is direct sales. David Bernstein, who's our channel manager, or is really our partnership manager, has done a fantastic job of building out our channel. We made a strategic investment about a year ago in building that channel out, and it's really paying some fruit. In fact, we just landed 2 deals through our channel partners, one of them being Hornblower, the other one being Holland America, which are 2 of the larger cruise line operators in the world. So a quick look at who the partners that we sell our product through are. It's a mix of consultants and recruitment ad agencies and a few RPOs, recruitment process outsourcers. Give you a quick look at our sales pipeline and who's coming in, and you can kind of get a look at some of the logos coming in on the partner side, some coming in direct, and at the bottom, you can see we've closed some business with some pretty substantial companies. Let's take a look at 4 of those. Community Health Network, they're the largest employer in Indiana. They have 38,000 employees, and almost everyone who is hired by Community goes through a conversation on Pivot CX. We knocked a competitor called JobBite out of the account, and we just came up for renewal, and I'm really happy we did get the renewal on that, and they did plus up. I think so it went from 54K a year up to almost 70. So it's a nice plus up there, and commitment on the value that we're providing there. Kelly Services, they are the second largest global RPO and business process outsourcer, and a pretty big player in the staffing market too. We were up against a competitor called SenseHQ, and they had a really unique use case. They had a problem with absenteeism. They had about 4,500 translators where they would have a pretty good chunk of them just not show up to work every day. And we helped them put a system in place using Pivot that would tell their workers when they needed to be online for their shift. And we would tell them about an hour before their shift. That cut that absentee rate, or it cut the absentee rate by 50%. Made a really big difference. And for Kelly, most importantly, the payback on working with Pivot was less than 1 month. Great clips, 4,500 stores, 750 franchise owners. We're up against a competitor called Paradox there. They're a single channel solution. And we actually were hired to help them engage their talent community of 2,200 licensed stylists. We did so, and just in 9 months, we were able to deliver 5,322 stylists, which is about 4,322 more stylists than they thought we were going to be able to deliver. So they really got their money's worth. We're up looking at renewal on this one. I think they're going to do it. The one I'm really excited about today is 7-Step. They're a very large RPO, and we help them deal with people not showing up to their first day of work by sending out a text alert to let them know when they're supposed to be there, and a few messages before that so they knew what to expect, where to be. That program went really, really well. And 7-Step is now reselling our product into their customer base. And we have our first 2 deals that actually just came in this morning.
Right. Okay, I know I've got to go really quick here. I know this is some of the really important stuff for the investors out there. So if I look at some of the basic SaaS metrics, I'll just highlight a couple of these. Year-to-year growth for us, this is Q1 over Q2 last year, this year, 100%, 117% SaaS growth. If I look at our CAC payback ratio, which is, a ratio of how efficiently we're converting sales expense, I'm super excited with 2 months. And it just tells Mike and I and the team that, getting the funding to increase our sales efforts pays off very quickly. Another real key point here, I think, is our gross margins. So we aren't a huge company. Obviously, when you saw the numbers here, our margins right now are around 65%. But the last 2 months, not quarter, I wish it was quarters, our margins have actually expanded, which Mike and I thought they would on some scale, and now they're in the mid 70 range. So really good SaaS metrics there. Last slide here, I think that I'm going to cover is just kind of what we're looking at. So what we are trying to do right now is to raise $1.5 million. Great news. We actually have a lead investor, Elevate Ventures, here in Indiana, that's committed $500K. It's a priced round. I will tell you, it's not a $6 million pre-money. Post raising that full amount, it'll be a $7.5 million deal. We also, for the sophisticated investors, we've been asked to convert the business from an LLC to a C Corp, and we will do that prior to our close, which we're anticipating, given the good traction we're getting right now, will be probably in 30 days. So I think, Mike, you want me to hit anything else in here? There's a lot of activity going on. I mean, Mike and I in the last week have probably been approached by 4 different large investment banks that are saying that there's a lot of traction activity in this space. There probably wasn't a year and a half ago or 2 years ago when COVID was hitting, but now it's becoming mission critical, and I think the C-suite knows it. Again, the other thing Mike kind of iterated here was we have a very clear high payback. So most of our customers, I think all that I can think of right now, are getting a payback in less than 3 months.
And with that, Hall, we'll turn it over to you for questions.
Yeah, sorry that went a little bit long.
Great. And John, what's your first question?
So when I think about this, I'm trying to understand why you're raising money, because it looks like you've got good margins. It looks like you've got good growth. It looks like you've got everything in place to grow. What's the target that you're aiming for that requires outside funding that will cause you to be substantially more productive?
Yeah, John. Well, I think Mike might have mentioned this, but today we have, I mean, I'm not saying I'm proud of this, but we have one person on the field right now that is our partnership person. We don't have a direct sales team. So all of this resource is going to be going into building out our direct sales team. So it's very clear where the funding's going. The opportunity is enormous out there. We can't get to the thing. And even at the margin performance that we have right now, there's not enough internally generated cash to fund the growth potential. So that's why we're going out with what we're calling a seed series 2 round at this point.
I was looking for your goal in terms of what you achieve. You hire that team and
sure.
they
Yeah, well, okay. No, I like that. I like that because everything's goal driven. And really what we're trying to do is get to 200 to 250 K of MRR within the next 6 to 9 months.
Okay.
So that's a dramatic improvement. And I think with that sales team and the funding that we're asking for right now, we will be able to achieve that. I'll mention one other thing, John. We have 2 really super sales leaders that are in our industry and space. As soon as we get this funding done, I've got the ability with Mike here to bring on those sales leaders that know what we have, where we fit in the market, and they're excited about coming on.
Great.
Cool.
Thanks for that. Lori, what's your first question?
Yeah, I was just curious with, it sounds like you have a lot of different types of customers and converting from a lot of different competitors, 4 different competitors on your slide. How do you build the stickiness into your product to keep these customers over a long period of time? And along the same thinking is, how long is your contract for? Is it multi-year? And again, what are the switching costs of someone leaving versus staying?
That's a really good question, Lori. And the answer to that is we're very, very sticky because number one, we get in and we replace multiple systems. So back to that 21 systems, most of our customers replace 3 to 5 of them in the first year and then more after that. So they build their workflow, their recruitment workflow, their HR workflows, they build that on our product. So that gives us quite a bit of stickiness. We do sign everybody 1-year contracts. We do a few pilots here and there, but mostly we're signing 1-year contracts. We have customers pay us in advance sometimes for the whole contract. In fact, that's kind of a new, very, very good trend. We do have a few customers now looking at doing it multi-year. So
Or I want to throw a couple things out there to kind of add on to what Mike's saying. So from the stickiness. So right now we virtually have little of any turnover and churn in the business. And most of the AOVs and our relationships are expanding. So once we get in, Lori, there's so many use cases that our client success team will help the recruiting or HR teams bring to the fore. We just wind up becoming really, really sticky. We're also integrated, which Mike, we went over very quickly, but the integration into those systems of record, which are the applicant tracking systems, they are there for forever and a day. One of the largest we did was with Oracle's Taleo. Roughly, they're the 3rd largest ATS globally. We have seamless integration with Community Health Network, 38,000 employees. There are 50 recruiters are using it. And so we're actually going out with a large campaign into that installed base right now. But once we're in there, we become very, very sticky, and it's hard for people to get, moved out. And what I'll say too is, we also
have
wrap up, Howard. Communication. Okay, sorry. But the multi-channel capability. So if you look at Sense, Paradox, and others, they're kind of right now one-trick ponies. So we're bringing a lot more flexibility to the table.
Great. Thank you so much. Our next presenter is going to be Jeff Carter of Scaffold Therapeutics.
Okay, you should see my slides.
Yes, we do.
So I'm founder and CEO of Scaffold Therapeutics. We make molecules that modulate RNA. And it's specifically mRNA. Now you'll recognize mRNA, of course, because the COVID vaccine is an mRNA vaccine. And there's been a huge amount of research, of course, going into mRNA and how it can affect different diseases before COVID, but also, of course, a lot more intensely since then. And it turns out mRNA, when it gets dysregulated, is associated with a huge number of different diseases, kind of across the whole spectrum. So that's really the focus of our research. We've put together an amazing team. The team that I'll tell you a little bit more about in a couple of minutes has put 6 drugs on the market in oncology and also in psychiatry. 2 drugs in the psychiatry segment are the only 2 drugs for postpartum depression, and also one of the blockbuster drugs from J&J. So for our work that we're doing now, the fastest way to get a therapeutic into the clinic is to go after an oncology indication. And the reason for that is that you don't have to test chemotherapies in healthy volunteers. In fact, of course, it would be unethical to do that. And so the longer term pipeline for us is the opportunity in neurodegeneration, indications like ALS, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. You have to do a lot of testing in healthy volunteers. The trials are very big. You need a lot of money to do that. That's sort of the longer term vision for us. And this hinges on our differentiator, right? So there are a couple of competitive molecules in our space that are exclusively targeting solid tumors. And our molecules, we've demonstrated, are highly brain penetrant. So it gives us access into that piece of the market where competitors don't currently have access. So we're raising a $1 million convertible. I'll give you all the details at the end, to nominate a development candidate, which will be the molecule that we advance to the clinic, and bring our next 2 pipeline opportunities into the stage that our current lead is at right now. So one of the reasons that we've been able to do this so efficiently, the company has only been running for 18 months, and we've only spent $1.5 million since inception, is by leveraging generative AI to really help us design molecules that exquisitely target the proteins that we want to be able to interfere with their interactions with mRNA in the body. And so that platform is operational right now, the first phase of it. And as we advance through our seed and probably Series A rounds, we'll be collecting additional data to enable biomarker discovery, so patient selection criteria, and also disease specificity. So we're in the early phases of planning for that right now. So initially, our first 2 indications are, the opportunity space is both in peripheral cancers and brain cancers. We'll be focusing on liver cancer to start with. So drugging a so-called peripheral cancer is a little bit more of a tractable problem. You have to demonstrate a lot more data to get into the brain and to show therapeutic efficacy in the brain. So that's sort of our second indication, is looking at brain tumors, to include glioblastoma is really the most deadly brain tumor, but also glioma and metastatic brain cancers. So if we look at the market size, liver cancer, 40,000 new cases every year in the United States. It's only a 20% survival rate, which actually surprised me the first time I looked it up. And it's the 6th highest death rate in the United States. Much more stark picture in glioblastoma, fewer cases, but the survival rate is really, really grim. And so there are definitely solutions that are needed in both of these disease areas. And so how did we land on liver cancer and brain cancer, right? There's not really a secret here. We followed the data. So you can see on the lower left, this is where our drug goes when we put it into a live animal, in this case, a mouse. So you can see it goes into the liver. In fact, you get almost 150 times as much drug in the liver as you see in the plasma. And in the brain, if you look over to the lower right, you get 4 times as much drug in the brain as you get circulating in the plasma. So the compounds are going to the organs, just sort of naturally going to the organs where we're selecting our indications. So we're leaning into our strengths here and really going after the indications where we think we've got the cleanest path to the clinic. So in addition to the fact that our compounds are sort of naturally going to these places, there's already academic research data that shows that suppression of the gene that we're interfering with actually has some advantage for curing disease. So on the left side here, you can see untreated mice, livers from untreated mice on the top. You can see they have significant tumors. And then if you disable the gene in research animals, turning off that gene, that METL3 gene, actually reduces the size of the tumor and shrinks them to nothing in some of these cases. And then you can see similarly the same story in glioblastoma, where you get tumors growing out of control in untreated mice, and then you silence that METL3 gene, and you see the tumor shrinking substantially. So, where are the asterisks here? I think it's probably time to call those out. These experiments that are in the published literature are from completely disabling the gene. So 100% suppression of the gene. And you can't really do that with a small molecule. With a drug, we probably get about 80 to 95% suppression, depending on the metabolism and et cetera, et cetera. So the studies that we're running right now are meant to illustrate that we can do this with a pharmacological inhibitor, a small molecule. We have a competitor who actually just released some data this morning at the American Chemical Society meeting in San Francisco. They've got a molecule that, as I said before, is not brain penetrant. They're going after some different indications, and it looks really good. So we feel like we have a pretty clear path to the clinic in terms of the biology that we're targeting. Our IP comes from the University of Zurich, so we've fully licensed all of this IP, and in certain cases, we're co-inventors of this. We work really closely with Professor Kaflich at the University of Zurich. We've got a great collaborative research relationship going on with him. So there's a lot of money coming into this space. A lot of the big players, we're talking to all of the logos in the industry box in terms of potential partnerships, and potential acquisitions, potential investments. We've got a number of relationships with big VC firms that we're close. We need to generate a little bit more data to attract a decent seed or Series A round. We're working with all these academics, and of course, there's a decent amount of grant-funded government money that's coming into the space as well. So in terms of landscape, I talked about this a little bit already. There's not that many competitors in the space, and none of these molecules are brain penetrant. So if you look at the correlation between the biology that we're drugging and brain cancer, there is a correlation there, and our molecules are the only ones that are demonstrably penetrating the brain. And so we feel like we have an open opportunity in brain cancer for the next 12 to 18 months that we have to take advantage of. And then in the peripheral cancers, a lot of the competitors are going after colorectal cancer and some of the lymphomas, B-cell lymphomas and lung cancer, but we haven't seen any of the competition move into liver, and our compound is telling us that it wants to go to the liver, so we're following it along. I mentioned that we have, I think, an exceptional team. So I've built and sold a company, ArcSpan. We bootstrapped that company. It was a multi-tenant SaaS company. We sold it to Bruker, which is a lab equipment manufacturer, back in 2019. And the science team, Renee Frank and Jeff Hickson, have all worked together at Agios, where that team discovered 3 molecules that subsequently became approved drugs for Agios, all in oncology. And then Frank went on to another company, Sage Therapeutics, where there were 2 additional drug approvals from Frank's team. And Gordon Saxty, who's leading chemistry for us, is a co-inventor of Balversa, which is a blockbuster J&J drug for metastatic bladder cancer. Between the team, they've put 25 plus clinical candidates together. And I'm just really proud of the team. We're definitely going to do it again. We've got some great advisors, and I think most notably Kathy Burns, who's our clinical advisor, chair of pathology at Dana-Farber. So as I mentioned before, we're raising $1 million. You can see the terms there on the left side. We'll be closing an industry partnership. We're actually pretty close to that already, recruiting ahead of biology and securing some non-dilutive funding. And then in terms of the product goals, we need to nominate a development candidate for liver cancer, show efficacy in live animals in the brain cancer indication, and pull our next pipeline opportunity up to the point where this one is now. So far we've raised $2.2 million, $1.5 million of that led by Yasso Ventures, and the balance funded by the management team. We burn up, it's about 100K a month. Our high watermark was 125. All that money is spent on R&D. We think we can exit for over 200 million in the next 5 years. You can see the comps at the top there. And in a rough timeline, we think we need about $25 million of total invested capital in order to get there. So I'll take your questions.
Thanks, Jeff. Lori, what's your first question?
Yeah, so you talked a little bit about the competitors going into the peripheral cancers, but perhaps not the liver cancer that you are primarily targeting as your beachhead therapeutic. Can you talk a little bit more about that and why that's the case? And again, just, maybe focus on the time to achieve the milestone you're looking at.
Sure. So there's a couple of questions there. The first one is, when you design a molecule, and I wish it was more scientific than this, but a lot of times it just goes where it goes, right? So you put it in a live animal and you do a so-called tissue distribution study, and you see where the compound ends up in a live animal. And so our observation is that our compound really loves to go to the liver and to the brain. But for example, the Storm Therapeutics compound really likes to go to the spleen, which points more towards lymphoma, leukemia, and lung cancers. We haven't gotten our hands on the 858 compound yet, but based on the data that they've been putting out, it looks like their compound likes to go to the colorectal system. And so I think you have to pick your niche, and that's the niche that we've selected in the periphery. I forget your second question. I'm sorry. Could you restate it?
You indicated a 5-year, you projected a 5-year to actually develop both the liver as well as the brain. I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, I try to overpromise and underpromise and overdeliver. Sorry, and that timeline I think is fairly comfortable. So if we nominate a development candidate this year, which the science team is telling me is definitely doable, it will take us about 18 to 24 months to get into the clinic from there. Clinical trial usually runs about 1 year. And, I think that we'll have a really good out-licensing opportunity just based on the Storm Therapeutics molecule coming out of phase 1 next year. But even if we have to go all the way through phase 1 to show efficacy of this molecule, that's really only about 3 years out. So I've built in a 50% buffer on what I think is a reasonable timeline. And in terms of the objectives for this fundraise, $1 million is more than enough to get us that development candidate that we need. And it gives us the flexibility to be able to matriculate our pipeline asset if things go well in the initial indication.
Thanks.
Great. John, what's your question?
So it seems like the obvious goal is to have a strategic investor buy you. And I wonder how you're cultivating those specific strategic relationships now so that 5-year exit is already well-developed pathway.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. So most of my career has actually been spent in sales. This is maybe where I'm the most comfortable. I met with Johnson & Johnson's innovation office today. I've been speaking with Sanofi and their BD group for about a year now. I've been speaking with Servier. Servier, for the record, bought all 3 of those Agios molecules and is very familiar with my team. And so, a handful of others, but those are really the big names. As you know, this doesn't happen overnight. So you just have to build those relationships, make sure you drip feed the data out to the partner, and really just make sure that they know the story and that they know the potential. And so I'll be doing that every day, all day, while the team executes the science.
And are you selling the molecule, or are you selling the company in the end?
So I think just typically for biotech, we'll probably end up selling the molecule as the lead. And then when we produce the second molecule, as long as it's attractive to the partner, and this is one of the reasons why the right partner is probably a global pharmaceutical company, so that they have reach into different disease areas. It becomes a little bit of a no-brainer for them to buy the whole company rather than licensing 2 assets and having to pay milestones and royalties. So I think the play is really to get acquired after the second molecule gets through phase 1 and not after the first one gets through phase 1. And maybe not all the way through, but you get my point. We show some good traction with the second one. We should be in very good shape for an acquisition.
Great. Thanks for the time we have there. Jeff, there's some good questions in the chat box. If you could answer those in the chat, that'd be great. And with that, let's go to our next Jeff. Jeff Missling of Spine Terra. Jeff, if you could launch your slides and kick off when ready.
Excellent. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Happy to introduce you to Spine Thera. Spine Thera, we're obviously working in the area of back pain. Back pain is the leading cause of disability in the United States and around the globe, and also the most expensive condition we treat in healthcare, more than cancer, more than heart disease, more than diabetes. $135 billion a year spent on back pain. We are zeroed in on a therapy that's given routinely in the middle of the patient journey. That's an epidural steroid injection. We do 10 million of these injections a year in the United States, 5.8 million of those in the specific market that we're targeting. And the problem is the outcomes there with the existing drugs are just not very good. Only about a third of the patients benefit from this intervention. We've got clinical data in hand that shows we double the efficacy rate of this procedure and extend the duration of action by a factor of 3 to 6. This has driven amazing KOL support, which I'll share more about throughout my presentation, and has the opportunity to greatly improve outcomes for patients who are suffering from severe low back pain and sciatica. Our drug that we call SX600 is built on our proprietary microsuspension platform technology. So this technology that we created in-house, protected by 6 US patents, we manufacture this technology. It enables long-acting or sustained release delivery of the pharmaceutical ingredient at the site of injection. Obviously, we're directing this technology towards this huge unmet need in back pain, but as a platform technology, there are numerous potential follow-on applications in areas such as regional anesthesia, treating opioid use disorder or addiction. And if you're investing in Spine Thera, you're not only investing in our lead asset, but you're investing in the potential of this platform as well. So again, let's go back to back pain, where we focused our development efforts to date. I talked about that patient journey in my introduction. So patients start out with back pain, they're going to seek care and be directed to conservative interventions such as oral medications, physical therapy, or simply waiting, right? And if those interventions don't provide pain relief, they're going to move on to some imaging and MRI. And if that imaging shows a herniated disc in their lumbar spine as the source of their back pain, they're a great candidate for an epidural steroid injection. And simply, this is just a cortisone shot into the epidural fat, a little layer of fat that surrounds the spinal cord, targeting that herniated disc that is causing an inflamed nerve in your low back. This is one of the most routine procedures performed in healthcare, 10 million times a year in the United States. If this doesn't work, then patients are moving on to expensive and risky interventions such as surgery and electrostimulation implants. So again, the key message here is this is entrenched in the standard of care. We're doing 10 million of these epidural steroid injections a year. But again, the problem with the drugs that are out there, and there's 4 different corticosteroids, 4 different drugs in this family of cortisone that are routinely used, and the outcomes are not very good. Only about a third of the patients receive adequate pain relief from this initial injection. 2/3 of those patients will receive a second injection within the first 60 days of treatment. So, I mean, that's not a very good outcome, right, for these patients suffering from severe pain. This is why we created our drug, SX600. We've taken the active ingredient that doctors prefer today, which is dexamethasone. We formulate that into our sustained release technology that we call a microsuspension. These are biodegradable microspheres that are half the size of a red blood cell. So these are extremely small. You can inject them at ultra high concentration through small needles and catheters right to the site in the body where they're needed. These microspheres stay there and deliver the drug over 90 days, as you can see on this pharmacokinetic study that we performed early on in dogs. So a single injection of our drug, you can see, extends the duration of exposure from 2 days, which is what patients are receiving today, out to 90 days. You can also see we avoid large peak systemic exposure initially after the drug is injected, which minimizes side effects. So let's jump to the clinical data, right? The proof is in the pudding. Last year, we completed a phase 2 proof of concept clinical study that was run in Australia. Patients were randomized into one of 3 arms: a saline placebo control group, which is the injection vehicle for our microspheres, a low dose 12.5 milligram or high dose of our sustained release product SX600. We followed those patients for 180 days after that single injection. The primary outcome measure was the proportion of patients who reported a 50% or greater reduction in their pain score. So every patient in the study had a custom app on their smartphone. Every evening they had to enter their pain score on a scale of 0 to 10. We had real-time monitoring of that. We know it was accurate, real-time. A patient missed 2 days in a row, a nurse would call them and make sure they were complying with the study requirements. So we had very accurate pain reporting in this study. You can see at the 60-day follow-up, 71% of the patients met this highly clinically relevant threshold of a 51% pain reduction compared to only 13% in the placebo group. And that treatment effect was maintained at 64% or higher through the 180-day follow-up period. So again, this is dramatically better outcomes than what people are routinely receiving with the standard of care today. So just a few quotes from KOLs. Tim Deere, we're actually doing an event with 10 Capital on Monday next week with Dr. Deere talking about opportunities in back pain. Could be one of the top pain doctors in the United States. He expects the adoption of our product to be near uniform in the area of pain management. Yesh Navalgund is the Chief Medical Officer of the largest ambulatory surgical center network on the East Coast. And he said to me, Jeff, this fits perfectly into the needs of the patient, the doctor, and the payer, right? So the clinical data has just really driven amazing support from KOLs. This is closely aligned with a quantitative market research study that we completed just back in July. So we had a third party, a group called Quest Consulting, go out on our behalf and survey 50 pain medicine specialists and 13 PM&R docs. And those two specialties perform about 90% of the epidural steroid injections. So they asked them about their clinical experience, made sure they were well qualified. They averaged 16 years of clinical practice. They averaged 29 of these epidural steroid injections per week in their practice. We presented them with a hypothetical target product profile based on our clinical trial results and asked them how likely they would be to use this drug in their practice. And the collective response was 70% utilization. In fact, if you dig into the data, 40% of the doctors said they would use it in 100% of their cases, which the consultant who performed this research on our behalf said, Jeff, this is extremely strong data. It portends very positively from a sales standpoint, because of course, what you want when you're launching the product is you want a small number of accounts to be heavily using the drug. And again, 70% total adoption is phenomenal and imputes a large market share for us. So again, looking back at the number of injections we're doing, 5.8 million a year. If you dig into that, 3.5 million of those are first injections or not repeat injections. So that's the size of the market we think is available to us. $600 per dose is very well suited to other comparable drugs that are in this family of long-acting injectables. At a 70% adoption rate, that projects peak sales of $1.5 billion. So this drug has billion-dollar sales potential and is really going to pique the interest of medium-sized specialty pharmaceutical companies, where $1 million product would represent substantial growth for them. There are other competitors chasing the unmet needs in this area. I've talked a lot about how we compare to these generic steroids that are being used off-label today with poor outcomes. There's a company, Silex Therapeutics, that has a product called SP102 in the clinic. They reported an outcome in a phase 3 clinical trial that was basically equivalent to the standard of care, 38% treatment response rate. Remember, we had 71% that lasted for 180 days. They only followed their patients for 1 month in that study. A company, Pacira, that if you're a pharmaceutical investor, you might know, they have a fairly successful product called Exparel that's used in treatment for local anesthetics. They announced last year they're entering this landscape with a product, again, that is going to be a short-acting solution and not competitive with our long-term 90-day drug delivery. So we're the only company in the space that has demonstrated clinical efficacy that is significantly better than the standard of care, and that is using the active ingredient that doctors know and trust today, dexamethasone. So a little bit about our management team and the company history. We have raised $7 million in grants, largely from the Department of Defense. Back pain is a leading cause of disability for actively deployed military personnel. The US military performs epidural steroid injections in forward deployed settings such as Baghdad and Afghanistan. We've raised $10 million in angel funding in our history, and these angel investors have come from companies that you might expect in this space: Allergan, Medtronic, Mallinckrodt, CNS Therapeutics. And early on in our company history, we actually struck a deal with Purdue Pharma, who is now a bankrupt opioid manufacturer. They provided a capital that essentially funded our phase 2 clinical trial, and at this point remain a stockholder on our cap table. Quickly on the IP, we've got 6 US patents and a very strong regulatory burden to overcome in this space. I will highlight our management team here and just say that this team is positioned to lead the late stage drug development. Our Chief Medical Officer, Lee Techner, 22 years in drug development. Almost all of that has been in pain research. On our board of directors, you can just scan across here some of the companies that these directors represents. We've been able to attract some very experienced talent. Doug Drysdale, who's currently the CEO at XVII, has literally done over $1 billion of M&A work in his career. In addition to Dr. Deere, who I mentioned earlier, we've got 2 of the leading doctors from the Mayo Clinic. David Mock is the chair of pain medicine for the Mayo in Rochester, advising us. So our offering that is available today is a convertible note, 10% interest with a 20% discount, comes with a 15% 4-year warrant and a $24 million valuation cap. And I will quickly share with you our use of proceeds is conduct a critical activity to move our drug forward with the FDA, which is a mini pig epidural toxicology study. So we've done a human clinical trial in Australia. We've done a canine epidural toxicology study and a rat epidural toxicology study, have shared that information with the FDA, and they have looked at it and concluded that rats are not an appropriate species to assess epidural tox, which they learned by reviewing our data, actually. So they've asked us to run a second non-rodent tox study. We view this as very low risk. We've already done it in dogs. The FDA has got no issue with our dog data. We're going to replicate that in miniature pigs. That activity opens up the door to US clinical trial development, which also opens up the door to an exit event for SpineThera. We're all talking to companies all the time, lots of interest in our technology, but the key we need to get to is an open clinical trial in the United States. So running this mini pig tox study opens the door not only to that US clinical development, but also to an exit event. So who might these companies be, right? Most of them, of course, we're under a CDA with, but we're in multiple discussions right now with companies that are interested in pain management, interested in specialty pharmaceuticals in the area of long-acting injectables. Hall, I will pause there and take some questions.
Yes, Lori, what's your first question?
Let me unmute here, sorry. My first question would be, you had indicated that when talking to potential users, these are experts in the field, that 70% said they would be in favor of utilizing this, which is a very high number. Congratulations. I'm just wondering, what were some of the concerns with the other 30%, or what are the risks that those that weren't in favor saw, or what do you think those hurdles were?
In the way the survey was conducted, Lori, we didn't interview them. They were responding to an online survey, right? So it was very binary in that event. So that 70% was the percentage of cases that doctors would utilize our drug in. There was some data indicating, that maybe younger doctors were more likely to adopt than doctors who were near the end of their career. But I don't think we really gathered enough data to address your specific question.
So asked a different way, is what would the risks perceived if I were someone who, had back pain? I mean, what at this point in time, and these are the toxicology studies, but what could be a possible risk of this compared to less effective delivery methods currently being used?
I mean, you're probably not going to like this answer, but there really is no additional risk. The
Okay,
biodegradable polymer using PLGA is already used in 15 approved injectable drugs. The active ingredient we're using, dexamethasone, is used in half of the cases today. So the risks there are very well understood. We're really not changing the risk profile of the procedure. The number one risk is an epidural hematoma, which is a procedure-related risk, right? A doctor inadvertently punctures a vessel in your epidural space, leading to a localized hematoma, and that's strictly related to the procedure, not to the drug.
got it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And John, what's your question?
So then thinking about risks, I noticed that angel investors tend to not always win on medical investments because you go through some kind of gate with the test. So what do you think the risks are that would prevent you from going public or going, having an exit with this drug in the next couple of years? You do the pig study, you have something weird show up. What kind of weirdness do you expect?
We think that risk is strongly mitigated by the fact that we've already done this study in canines without an issue. And I didn't mention, but we've also done a 14-day pilot study in miniature pigs. So of course there is the unknown that's out there, but I think that risk is very highly mitigated by the fact we've already done this study in canines. We've got human clinical data in 56 patients where no safety concerns arose in a 14-day pilot study. I mean, I characterize this as a check the box activity to satisfy FDA reviewers.
Cool. And you need runway for the time to get there.
We do, right? And we have that built in with this as well.
Cool.
Great. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jeff, for the presentation. Let's bring up
All right,
our
thank
final
you.
presenter, Adam of Trace. If you could go ahead and launch your slides, Adam, we'll kick off for the final presentation. And then that'll probably take us to the half-hour mark. Those who want to stay and learn more about 10 Capital will be glad to do that as well. Adam, go ahead.
Thank you, Hall. Good afternoon. I'm Adam Greenspan, CEO of Trace Orthopedics. With our products, tendon repairs are made easier to restore mobility for millions of patients. There's a major gap in the treatment of partial tendon tears. They occur all over the body, most commonly around the hip, shoulder, and ankle. But due to the cost, risk, and recovery time, they're typically not referred for surgery until it becomes a complete tear, which can take years. Our solution is the patented Trace Tendon Fastener System. And I'm going to bring in a video animation here. So we use what's called a percutaneous approach. It's insertion through a single small incision needle guided by ultrasound. Then it's going to be an implantable anchor screw and spring washer that is fitted inside of this 10-gauge delivery needle mechanism. The spring compresses into a washer. The loose tendon is reattached to the bone without full anesthesia in an outpatient setting. This major breakthrough makes partial tears more treatable. Current landscape ranges from minimal to more invasive, going from left to right here. Frontline treatment is conservative, including injections, needling, or a microablation technique called tenotomy. It's a growing market, still does not achieve repair. On the other side is open or arthroscopic surgery, which is a mature and crowded market, but there's nothing in between that bridges these treatment approaches. This manifests as a major treatment gap for a partial tear. That's where Trace comes in with a repair product that is minimally invasive. We're seeing a huge market opportunity with over 31 million cases reported each year in the US. We have a readily serviceable market niche classified by cases of partial tear with clean edges, i.e. no shredding of the tendon, no retraction. This accounts for 10% of partial tear cases, representing a $2.4 billion serviceable market. Here's a sample case that started with a partial tear of the gluteus medius at the hip, seen on MRI as initially in the middle here, as the brightness pointed to is fluid at the injury site. This patient had conservative management, platelet-rich plasma injection, and physical therapy. 6 months later, on the right, the tendon completely torn away from the bone, shown by the dramatically increased bright fluid signal. At this point, the only therapies to offer the patient are open surgery or a walker. These cases are our low-hanging fruit. We initially proved the concept by placing our product into human cadavers, standard for feasibility testing for musculoskeletal devices. Then, since then, we've updated the designs, we've developed product specifications and prototypes for more cadaver labs and animal testing. The 3D printed delivery system seen on the top left here passed our design review, as that's my co-founder, Dr. Bill Morrison, placing a trace fastener into the human cadaver with ultrasound guidance using the portable unit. So we recently completed a pilot animal test with the veterinary school at Colorado State University, which operates a cost-friendly contract research organization. So we tested our device on the top against off-the-shelf Arthrex unit. Our device profile is much smaller and maintains stability in all 3 sheep. Also repeatedly withstood nearly 700 pounds of force in pull-out strength mechanical testing, which is over triple the strength of industry standard suture anchors. There's an X-ray radiograph there to illustrate the function in the device, in the use case. As for intellectual property, we do have patents issued and pending worldwide on the fastener implant, the delivery system, various improvements, including material compositions and coatings. Plus, we have method claims. For the FDA, the trace tendon fastener is a class 2 medical device. We'll get clearance using the 510(k) pathway. So no clinical trials, we show equivalence to existing products. Our predicate is an anchor washer system. We've started the submission process. Next, we'll share results from the sheep pilot and our protocol in a pre-submission meeting. That way, there's no surprises when we do our submission. That is going to be starting in Q1 of 2024. Then we're going to be on track for clearance in about 12 to 15 months from now, with the initial market launch planned shortly after that in Q3 of 2024. So we'll be ready to commercialize on day 1 after clearance with planned alpha launch. We have a dozen commitments now from interventional hip specialists to be our alpha sites as we launch with gluteus medius as our beachhead market. Then we have 52 general hospitals and private practice groups lined up for our subsequent expansion phase. We'll add more clinical applications, scaling sales team, calling on orthopedics, plus partnering with international distributors. By then, we do envision specific reimbursement codes for the trace procedure. In the meantime, there are general payment codes available that can be applied to cover trace repairs. So this will facilitate early acceptance by physicians, namely interventional radiologists attracted by the surgical rate for these procedures, but orthopedists also have a strong interest to do these as well, given the short procedure time. Our revenue model flows from selling single-use procedure-based products to hospitals and surgical centers. In the context of the overall payment scheme, trace devices will be procured by the sites of service, which will follow our guidance to obtain medical reimbursement as applicable. Initial ASP of the main trace fastener kit is $800 with a COGS of $198. Some cases will use a second preloaded fastener with a similar profit margin over 75%. Looking at our forecast now, our first revenue is late 2024 from the gluteus alpha launch. We'll have some repeat users, of course. We'll add new users and we'll be adding indications, fueling a jump in procedures, pushing our annualized revenues up quickly. So by 2025, we'll be profitable, repairing rotator cuff, Achilles. We're also going to be used as an add-on total joint replacement in conjunction with some of the orthopedic surgeons that we're working with. And our team covers the entire medtech spectrum. We have dozens of patents issued, products launched, deals executed. I'm CEO, biomedical engineer with over 15 years in licensing and entrepreneurial program management. Dr. Morrison is a KOL in the field of musculoskeletal radiology. He started in the Air Force. He's had an extensive career at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia and he already has a product on the market, a steerable needle. Our board chair is Paul Janeski. He runs a medical device incubator and asset broker firm, Hatch Medical. He's also a member of Kretzu Forum in the Southeast and brings over 30 years in device sales and executive management. We have world-class scientific advisors, and our medical advisory board includes multiple key opinion leaders in sports medicine, orthopedics, as well, to help drive clinical adoption. So our Series A is open now. It's led by Kretzu Forum, Mid-Atlantic region. It's 1.5 million at a 4.5 million pre. We're using their term sheet. It's designed to be investor friendly. It's preferred equity with a 1x liquidation preference. We have about 300K still open. Yeah, this slide actually, since the slide, we're actually now at 1.08 million subscribed with the same amount committed. So we actually recently announced some extra investment incentives. There are attached warrants. So we're bumping up the coverage. So for this last tranche that we're in, it's 30% warrant coverage. And in addition, we are offering them at half price if exercised by August 31st. So our goal is to achieve a premium exit, monetizing the intellectual property by licensing to a strategic or through an outright acquisition. So we're projecting an ROI of about 5 to 16x in 18 to 48 months, corresponding to 4 value inflecting milestones that I see along our exit path illustrated here. Getting FDA clearance, then after a successful alpha launch, the usual target is 100 cases. There's strong likelihood of a high value license or an early acquisition here. If not, we'll open a B round to expand our indications and then introduce product improvements such as surface coatings and absorbable compositions. At that point, we'll have a full management team, the board driving us to an exit target nearing 150 million. We are pioneering image guided fixation. Join us as we give people back their mobility. I want to leave time for questions, so I'll stop here.
Great. Thanks, Adam. John, what's your first question?
But I guess I'd like to go back. Where do you think that in the testing with the FDA approvals, you're going to have any friction? Do you think the 510K is going to be just, as was said before, a box check and then you're on? Or do you think that there's places where there could be side effects that are troublesome? At least for me, I wish it wasn't a piece of metal. I wish it was something else that went away after time. But you tell me what you think is going to be a mess.
Yeah, so that's the end goal, is to establish a biomaterial aspect to the tech, and we've done some of that already. We've done some exploratory investigation with some materials, and then there's some that are already cleared, but mechanically we want to make sure that we get some of the properties, like the shape memory aspect. Certainly is, that's one of the main challenges with the polymer materials. So we actually decided to try to reduce the barriers as much as possible by incorporating established biomaterials. So we're using stainless steel right now, and so there's there has been some pushback from the orthopedic community, depending on the location, the anatomical location. Not so much in the hip, but in the shoulder, for instance, there's definitely some resistance or just some curiosity. Really, the device is rather small, but yeah, the nitinol and titanium as well is also a consideration. We're not expecting that too much. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of getting the right classification. There was actually a divergence in the coding system for distinguishing between suture anchors and suture washers. So yeah, we're going to go in, even though that our device actually resembles a suture washer, the predicate that is closest to ours is classified as a suture anchor. That's what we're planning for our pre-sub meeting. So that's going to be in 3 months. We'll have much more definitive opinion at that point. But yeah, we're going to plan. We're trying to anticipate that, and that's why we're proposing an animal test program. And so because we do want to preclude the clinical and be able to do that post-market rather than as de novo if possible. And we're not, we're like my board chair Paul Janeski would say that we're not trying to land a rocket ship on the moon here. We're just pinning down a tendon using an established technique, but we're doing it percutaneous, so it's a little bit miniaturized, and we're doing it under imaging guidance. But yeah, there's also a possibility of doing it as an adjunct, as I mentioned before, to a total joint replacement, which if necessary, we could pursue that as our use case in our indication to try to kind of even make it less friction through that process.
Sounds good. Lori, what's your question?
Yeah, so what would be your biggest hurdle or challenge in meeting the 2025 Q1 numbers, going from the 15 initial sites that you're starting with to the goal that you've outlaid? What do you see the biggest risk for maybe not hitting those numbers?
It's patient referrals, and that's, yeah, we just need to make sure that we get enough cases that we'll be able to keep making sales. And we do have a couple drivers highlighted here, and that's getting patients referred in, not just in that first indication of gluteus medius at the hip, but also the follow-on indications, rotator cuff, Achilles, biceps repair, triceps repair. We have a small collection of indications, but also once coming out of that alpha launch, we're gonna increase the price point by 50%. We believe the market supports that, but we want to make sure that we have something that works. So we're going to back that up with that initial clinical data that we collect. But yeah, the referral patterns could be a challenge. So that's why we're building a network of clinical adopters now. And so that's why we have the first 12 sites already lined up, but also another 50 and counting. And it's leveraging networks through my co-founder, Dr. Morrison. He's past president of various societies and musculoskeletal radiology, and then also this board of advisors that we've been building that we now have four people on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey, guys, I think we're at the end of our session today. We're at the end of our time. I want to thank our panelists, John Sechrest and Lori Ciccone, for their great questions. I want to thank all of the presenters and the great pitches that they made. And with that, for those on the panel, you're welcome to stay around, but we're at the end of that part of the presentation. For those in the audience, if anybody wants to learn more about 10 Capital and how we work, please stay on the line, and we'll give people just a moment to make a decision, and then we'll talk about how we work, and through the chat box, we'll be glad to answer any questions you guys have as well. But with that, guys, we'll go ahead and close the formal portion of the presentation. We'll have an informal chat afterwards. Thank you guys so much.